Hey everyone. Alright, thanks for joining today. This is Navid. Thanks for putting your details in the comments about where you're from and how long you've been playing. Today we're going to talk about navigating the neck and the fingerboard, going up and down, the possibilities that we have with this. And so it's a pretty important thing. If you're really a beginner, this will be useful for you. You may not be able to do exactly what I'm showing you, but it'll be good to keep in the back of your mind for when you do get to a point where you can actually go up and down the neck and you're able to hit those notes that I'm referring to. That's what we're going to talk about today. A few announcements to get out of the way before we start. So there's a student Oud recital tomorrow, December 18th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and it's at this link. I'll share it with you in a sec here. Here it is. One sec. And starting on Monday, we have some Oud for Guitarists learning bundles happening. So that means that I'm going to be packaging some of my courses together, and you'll be able to save lots of money on them. Just once a year thing that I do around the holidays in December. So you can check that out. Alrighty, here. That's the link for the student recital. It's happening tomorrow. And what else we got? So that's about it. Also, in January, I wanted to let you know that taking some new Oud students, so there is some room for some people. If you want to get started on playing the Oud, if you're a bare beginner, I've got a Oud learning package, 4 lessons for $160, 1 lesson per week. And this is what we are going to study in those 4 lessons. You don't need to know anything about Oud or music. You do need to. It would be preferable if you can tune your Oud. The tuning that I use and what we'll be using today is C, G, D, A, F, C. That's what we use here. C, G, D, A, F, and C. So in lesson 1, you'll be learning how to tune the Oud, hold the Oud, right hand exercises, left hand exercises, learn the first position and the notes on the C string, G string. So you'll be able to know what the note names, the basic note names on the C and G string are. Lesson 2, you're going to keep building on that knowledge. So learn the notes on the D string, learn a few exercises there. Learn the notes on the A string, learn some few exercises there. Learn how to put these all together, and some notes on the bass strings. Then lesson 3, you'll be focusing on learning the C major scale, learning how to do some stroking patterns, 8th notes, 16th notes, so you'll be able to coordinate the left hand and right hand. And then in lesson 4, you'll be able to learn a new song. There's your choice of Arabic song or Persian song in using the notes that you know. You can either learn Halalalaleya by Sayyid Darwish or Mor Sahar, which is a Persian song. So that's my beginner package that I have, and there's a link if you're interested in taking advantage of that. The way that this works here, you make your payment at this link, the PayPal link there, and then it takes you to the calendar where you can then schedule your lessons one after another. Anyway, we can discuss that later. So yes, let's get to the actual lesson. So this is a fun one. Hope you downloaded the notation. The link is also in the chat there. All right, so we're going to be using the notes in the Nahawand Maqam, or Nahawand scale, if you will. And we're going to be focusing mostly on the C string. So the notes that we have that we're going to be using the open C, D with first finger, E flat with second finger, and then sometimes we'll be using F up here with the fourth finger, And sometimes we'll be playing it with the first finger. And then we'll also be using G, sometimes with the third finger, sometimes with the first finger, and A flat, one semitone above that. So those are the notes that we have. We may also use B flat too, I think. B flat would be up here. So important thing to think about when you're getting used to the oud and how the oud works is to remember that this string, as you go up, of course, it makes the note higher. So up here you have an octave, C. This is the octave. When you split that in half, that this length of the string, you get the same note but in a higher range. Now, the next important segment is the fifth degree, the fifth note from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this, where the neck meets the body of the oud, that's the fifth note relationship from the open string. So C, G. These notes sound harmonious together. And you know when you're getting that in tune if it sounds like your open string beside it. So that's another important position, another important marker. If you don't have anything to tell you where you're going, that's your marker there. The next kind of most important note is the F note, which is going to be around here. It's going to be, let's say you're holding that G with your third finger, and your fingers are equally spaced from each other. It's about here. So 1, 2, 3 finger spaces to the left of G. And this is a fourth relationship, so this is also very important. Then down here we've got, if you use one finger per semitone, you can find other notes. D, E flat with the third finger above that, and then, so that's a minor third interval, and then E natural is a major third interval. So we'll be using different fingers to use this. So the first thing I want to look at with you before we actually do one of the more serious exercises. So here you can see the exercise on the screen. Now this one, this is the actual exercise we'll do, but if you're not there yet, ready to play the exercise, then you got to get used to these finger positions. So we've got this exercise happening here. You have the open string, you've got your first finger on D, and you're just practicing finding that note. And you play these 16th note rows, you play them all down, up, down, up. So the next thing we have is the index finger to second finger, E flat. Then what we have here, I found a typo. Found a typo already. Okay, so this note here, this E flat, that should be second finger. So that will be second finger, fourth finger. E flat to F. So you notice that I keep my middle finger down when I go for that stretch. My index finger is kind of hovering up here. It can do that, but it's kind of ready to play. If I need it, it can come back really soon. It's not like way out here, and it would not take a long time to come back. So you need to keep it close as you can anyway. Then the next phrase we have here is F to G. First finger on F, so you have to slide up, find that F note. If you're not sure where it is, find the G, because the G is easier to find because you have that space. Then walk your fingers down and then find that note. That's some, you can always check the relationship with the open string to see if you've got it in tune. Sounds nice to me. Then you start doing this. Then shift your index finger up to G and play. Now we go back down, shift down, back to F. This is going to help you find these notes. And then scroll down. We've got 1 to 3 here. This is another way of coming down. Compare this measure here to this measure. This is another way. Usually when you go up, it's easy to use second finger first, fourth finger. But when you're coming down, sometimes we use first and third for E flat to F there. So that again requires you to shift down. And then shift down again to find D with your index finger. And then alright, let's try to do that the whole thing. And let me know if you have any questions. I'll do my best to answer them at the end of this lesson here. Okay, just going to turn that off and follow along with the sheet music that you have. Alright, so ready, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So that's the exercise to help you find the intervals between those notes as you go up and down the neck. All right, now let's look at the top exercise. Show that on the screen again. Go through it one by one. Okay, so here we have the stroke pattern down, up, that is consistent all the way through. And we have C, D, E, D, C, D, E, D, C, D, E, D, C. Do, re, mi, re, do, re, mi, re, do, re, mi, re, do. Then we have first finger, second finger, fourth finger. Re, mi, fa, mi, re, mi, fa, mi, re, mi, fa, mi, re. Or D, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, D. Then we go down. So here's the interesting one. So this one, in this case, what we have here is we're going to imagine that we're going to play E flat with our first finger. So we shift it up, and then we also shift up to F with our first finger. This is very tricky. So that we can reach G with our third finger, like we did before. So E, F, G, F. Then we've got a little surprise for you. An E flat with the fourth finger. Where is that going to be? That is going to be just to the right of the neck joint here with your pinky finger. on the G string. So this is how we do that again. So there are many ways that you can actually do this and play the same phrase. You could choose to switch here right away if you wanted to. After you do. You could do that. But this is one other way that you can do it. Okay, so that is a tricky one there. That's new. So we have the same E flat here that we have here. And then we shift up again, playing F, G, A flat. Then we shift up again to G. Now we shift down. Okay, now the next measure, we go back to our pinky on E flat. So that's on the G string right here. Now, after this, we have options. In some cases, we might stay here in this position and play. But in order to make it a bit more fluid, what I want you to do is to practice jumping down, shifting down, so that you can play down, up, all the way through in this exercise. So let's look at measure 7 here. So we got 4, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 4. Shift. 1, 2, 4, 2, 1. So then we're back into our first position here. So that's the exercise. Let's do this one more time. I'll take this thing off the screen. Okay. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Shift. Shift. And shift. And stay here. Shift. And stay. All right. Very cold today over here. It's morning time in Japan and beautiful weather outside, but it's really cold. It was quite warm yesterday and all of a sudden went down to 0. Alright, so now we're going to look at the last exercise at the bottom, going all the way up and all the way down to the open string. Let me show that on the screen here. Okay, so we have C, D, E, F, G, and back down. So this you can repeat as many times as you want. This is one way in which you can go up and down the fingerboard. So let's see the finger positions. We've got open, then 1, 2, and then we shift up to F with 1, then third finger on G, then back down the exact same way. First finger, second finger, first finger, open. So it's basically I like to call this the crab walk. It's kind of like you're crab walking. Your fingers are kind of going up and down like this. But you use 1, 2, 1, 3. If you're playing C major scale or E natural in there, then you would use your third finger. You'd play it like that. Again, that's one way of going up and down the neck. Now let me show you another way in which we do. We're going to go all the way up to A flat. So we have C, D with first finger, E with second finger, F with first finger, then G with third finger, then A with fourth finger, and back down. And then shift, second finger, first finger, and open. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Now, one thing I haven't written here on the notes is what do you do when you have to go even higher? So in that case, you have to think about what you can do and where you can shift. That's what the whole principle I want to show here is that you want to think about where the melody is going and how many fingers you can have available to play those notes. So for example, we wanted to go to B flat instead of A flat. What we would do in that case is we would go 1, 2, 4, then shift up to G so that we have fingers available for G, A flat, B flat. That's the logic. Where are you going? Where are you going back? And how many fingers you can make available for those notes so that you can play them conveniently. You want to do less shifting. You don't want to, you want to use the right fingers for where you're going and coming. So for example, you wouldn't do something like, let's say, if you needed to go to A flat and B flat, you wouldn't do something like this to end up with the pinky here, because then you'd have to shift up in a kind of weird position. But you could, if you needed to, for whatever reason, come back down, then you could use your pinky on G, because then you have a couple fingers behind to make available to play other notes. So another thing to keep in mind is that the largest stretch that I usually do on the oud here between two fingers is usually my first and second finger. Let's say I have to do something like this. Another way of doing that would be to play with the pinky finger on the G string. But you can also do some ornaments require you to keep everything in one line. So you'd have a big stretch between your index finger and second finger here. And then usually my second finger and fourth finger also provide another nice stretch too. So that's basically what I wanted to cover today. I hope that opened up some possibilities for how you would go up and down the neck and how to use the other strings in helping you to reach other notes that would have been awkward. So yeah, if you have any questions about anything related to this, please let me know and put it in the chat. I'd be happy to answer your questions. Let's see here if there's any questions. Just say hello to everyone. Hi Nizo, that's nice to see you. Dragon Joe, good to see you. JD, nice to see you. Andy, Steve, thank you for coming, guys. Albert, nice to see you again. It's great to have you here. Mohammed, great. Hi, Carol. Good to see you. Okay, Collector. Let's see. You have a question here. Yeah. Collector. That's exactly it. Yeah, it helps to think where you are and where you're going. Definitely. Oh, hi, Brad. Good to see you. All right. How should one practice your intonation? That's a good question. So the first step to understanding intonation is to understand the relationship between different notes. This is a big deal. So we have our fundamental note on an open string. And each note that you press on the fingerboard all the way up has a relationship to the first note, the open string. Right? So, like I mentioned earlier, we have, when you split the distance in half, you have the C, the exact same note as the open string. And it should sound exactly the same. If you're a little bit to the left, it's not going to sound exactly the same. So you want to practice, if you want to really practice your intonation and do it properly without using a tuner, you have to start singing. Really, basically, you have to start singing. So you have to start going, copy this note with your voice, and then try to sing it higher, the same note. Memorize that sound briefly in your head, and then try to sing higher, the same note. And try to match it with your voice. That's how you get better at intonation, really. The next relationship that you need to memorize how they sound together, is the fifth. This note here, right at the neck junction. Da, da. These are very harmonious. Da, 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 da. Then the next one is the fourth. 1, 4. And you have to practice memorizing the relationship between that. So C, F, C, F, C, G. So I've memorized the relationship between, and using your voice helps you memorize the relationship, how far apart they are, because you're using something physical. It's like when you extend your arm. You extend your arm all the way out, you memorize what that feels like. Your muscles remember what it feels like to reach all the way out as opposed to here, halfway. So we're doing the same thing with our vocal cords, tightening them, loosening them to find different notes. So you have to sing, basically. Very important. Then the next interval that you can memorize the sound is the major third. So C. These are also harmonious together. They sound good. So you want to practice that. Na, na, C, E. You can also do C and E flat. C, E, da, 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 da. Once you memorize these, that'll help your intonation. And from there, it just becomes muscle memory after you practice, and you get feedback from your teacher telling you if this sounds correct, this doesn't sound correct. Always comparing to a standard. It also helps your understanding of intonation. But I would start there. Start by finding this fifth. And then the fourth. And then walk up. Walk up to C, D, E, F. And sing that and memorize it. Memorize how it sounds. The same way that you hear a song on the radio that's catchy and you remember the melody, you remember these melodies. You remember how it sounds relative to the starting note that you hear. All right. Hope that helps. Hey, Trevor. Okay. Oh yeah, this I needed to was experimenting with some strings. Just needed to keep these on here in case I need to put these strings elsewhere. Well, sometimes when you cut them too short, they don't work on different ouds, because whenever you retie the string here, you sometimes lose some string if you need to cut it off or whatever. What would happen to the sound if I removed the rosettes? That's a good question. Sometimes some people report that it gets louder, maybe more clear. I don't know really. I think it's quite a marginal difference what the rosettes do for the oud sound, but you did better. What I would do, I know it's been discussed in depth on Mike Oud's forums. So if you go to mikeouds.com or mikesouds.com, what is it? It's mikeouds.com, and you go to the forums there. Search about rosettes and see if you can find anything. I know it's been discussed at length, what the rosettes do for the sound of ouds. But I think it's pretty marginal what it does, It's hard to say. Most of the magic is in the soundboard, really. But if you can think about it, this is like an extra, something that the sound has to pass through. So it definitely is going to have some kind of effect. Maybe when you don't have the rosettes, maybe the sound is more direct. But maybe it resonates a bit more with this little thin membrane of material here. Perhaps. All right. I've heard that Turkish music uses 9 microtones instead of the 4 microtones in Arabic music. So that's a good question. So that is in theory. In theory, there's 9 microtones instead of 4, and in fact, the 4 microtones in Arabic music is not really correct either. In fact, Arabic musicians, especially professionals and people who are really know the tradition well, know that they don't just use 4. There's infinite microtonality, and there always is. That people are not going to play the same thing exactly the same twice. And so if you listen to recordings of even the same makam played with different players in Turkish music, you'll hear slightly different variations of intonation. That's just how it is. There's no in reality there's no set 9 microtones, but in theory you can divide it up that way. That's one way of looking at it and thinking about the music in that way. But it's never a precise thing. So yeah, keep that in the back of your mind. You can always rely on your ear if you have something to listen to. And that's what I recommend people to do. Trust your ear. You may hear, for example, in Turkish music, you learn that makam rast, the 3rd degree, is 1 comma 1 microtone flat. And sometimes you hear it sharper and flatter in different styles, different people playing. So you really have to use your ear. Every case is kind of special. Also in Turkish music, they also have moving notes. These some of these microtones move as you ascend the scale. They get sharper, and some get flatter. So this has to be thought about too. Not just there's 9 microtones and that's it. It's more. There's infinite microtones that you could possibly use. It's just that it's something about agreement with the musicians that you're playing with too, what microtones you use. For example, when it comes to kanun, for example, they have fixed intervals that they have to use. So in that context, an oud player has to match the intervals they use. And so that would all be agreed upon before you start playing. So that's something else to keep in mind. Kanun players are also using their own, intonation, and I think they're trying to match as closely that 9 microtones in theory that we have, but it's not always so 9 microtones per se. And over the years, Arabic music has minimized the amount of microtones they actually write on the page, but in reality, the reality is a little bit different. Sometimes it's sharper. Sometimes in one maqam, the half flat will be a little bit sharper, a little bit flatter, and it depends on the region too. There's just so many differences, and it's always something you have to go back to the ear and the context that makes intonation what it is. All right. The function might be to trap the reverb in there. Like I said, it's another thing to move the sound in. So yeah, there are advantages to tuning the lowest strings to D and G. There are. I'll show you briefly here. So for a solo oud player, sometimes having the open strings tuned to G and D are effective for having those bass notes readily open so you can play flashy stuff. Especially when you're playing, when those are the first and the fourth degree of any maqam that you're playing, let's say Bayat or Hijaz. It's already open there for you, so you can create a more full sound playing with the open strings tuned differently. In Persian music, for example, it's very important to have the low bass strings tuned to important bass notes that you might be using, so that you can always fall back to those and have those open, because we use a lot of rhythmical stuff. You do stuff like that with the strings, so it's nice to have those strings open. So it creates a louder sound, fuller sound. Good to see you. How do I get the most clean sound from hitting the strings? That's a really good question. I flip back and forth with this kind of thing. So sometimes I like to use a very heavy, thick risha like this. And sometimes it sounds really nice. Sometimes I like the sound. Sometimes I don't like the sound. Other times I prefer a very flimsy rubber risha like this, plastic one. So it really depends on how your oud resonates too, how it sounds, what rishas sound better or worse. At different times, my mood calls for different things. So when it really comes down to it, I think clean sound is how much you're letting the the strings resonate. So how quick you are to get off those strings and give them room to resonate is what's going to get a clean sound. Also, when you get more advanced and you have a more parallel, you can have a more parallel approach to the strings, and that way you can get an even hit or an even attack onto the strings from both sides by keeping your angle very parallel to the strings. those are some suggestions. Also, play with the distance between closer to the bridge, closer to the sound hole. Find the sweet zone. You can extend your wrist a little bit to get the notes around the sound hole here. You get a different tone. Or you can go closer, get a stronger attack, sharper attack. All these kind of things can affect the sound. So there's really, you have to kind of aim for something, aim for a sound and try to experiment and see what's going to bring out that sound. If you're looking for a clean sound, but I think the best thing is to get that risha quickly off the strings. So that means that your attack is very quick, doesn't hesitate. It's also using the weight of your hand, it's very heavy. So I'd recommend really just focusing on getting a nice sound with the right hand. I think that's where it really all comes. Also getting to know your strings, how they sound. For example, on this oud, the high C strings are very close together. Sometimes you hear them make contact with each other, like there. So sometimes I may want to lighten up when I play that C string, so that they don't really jangle together. So getting to know how these strings sound can help. Also, letting the strings settle after a pretty long time. These ones sound really nice, warm and buttery to me. I don't remember when I put these strings on, but the bass strings are nice and they're really settled in nicely. So I like how they sound. They're worked in. They're right at their sweet spot. These ones not so much. I don't really like these nylon strings or PVF strings that I have on here, so I'm gonna switch them out at some point. But yeah, all right. Any other questions that you have, I'd be happy to answer. Other than that, I hope you come out and watch the student oud recital that we've got tomorrow. Again, it's at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. December 18th, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I left, this is the first oud recital that I've done with my students, and so it's the first time I left it completely voluntary. So it's going to be interesting to see what we have coming out, and people have been working very hard. Some of my students are not so regular. Some of them are more regular than others. Some of them are not inclined to share what they've been working with, but some are willing to share, so I've been happy to see that. We've got some room for everybody here, and yeah, so it's going to be fun to see what people have been working on, and it'll be live again tomorrow. Yeah, and then also we got holiday oud program bundles. Going to have some bundles happening, so if you're on the newsletter, you'll hear about them, and I'll have a link and all the details there, so you can save some money if you want to buy a couple, 2 or more packages. We'll have some deals. Also in January, if you want to do 4 lessons and tackle something specific, you can also take advantage of that. Any other questions you have, you can always email me. All the links are in the chat there to what we were talking about. Yeah, any other questions? If you have another few minutes, get any questions, burning questions you want to get asked, I'll do my best to answer. We can spend another 5-10 minutes on that. Another question, how to know the right position for my left hand? So that the right position depends on where you're going and where you're coming. For example, there's 2 correct positions for, let's say, when you're playing C major scale or Makam Ajam on Do. You can start with your second finger on Do. Use your third finger for C, or you can start with your third finger means you have to use your pinky finger for C. So you can do re mi fa sol la si do. So you could do that. Both are correct. But at a certain point, if you have to keep going higher, then you have to change, because you have to reach different places. So if you wanted to go up to G, you have to use your first finger on D. And don't use your second finger, or else it's going to be awkward to move a little bit. If you lead with your first finger, then you can lead more easily, get up there. Another way that you can do it is if you need to go even higher, you can shift here and then shift here. So it depends on where you're going, what is the right position. And there are many options that work. It's not always, there's not always one thing that's right. There's one thing that might be a little bit better, one might make more sense. And if you don't mean the different positions, if you mean the intonation, like the sound of the notes, is the sound of the notes right or wrong, that's more complicated. So maybe you weren't here when I was talking about intonation, finding the notes. Like for example, when you try to find the right position, you have to use your voice to memorize the relationship between notes, like C and the octave here, also C and G. Da, 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 da. You have to memorize the relationship between this with your voice. It doesn't mean that you have absolute pitch. We're not talking about absolute pitch, we're talking about relative pitch. You take this note as your starting note, you match it, and you try to find sol. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, sol. There it is. Do, re, mi. Okay. Do, re, mi. Try to find mi. Do, re, mi. Is that right? Do, re, mi. No, it's not. It's not matching what you've memorized to be the right sound. Do, re, mi. That's how you know you're in the right thing. You have to memorize these sounds with your voice, and the same way that you hear a song on the radio and the melody is stuck in your head, you have to memorize the relationship between these notes. So, for example, if you're playing a song, you have to memorize that with your voice in order for you to then take it to the oud and realize, okay, am I playing it right? Is that then you have to find it with your voice. So this takes a lot of practice, and you kind of have to work. Sometimes it helps to work with somebody to find the right pitch, and also or listening to recordings. If you have a song that you like to play, for example, For Nachal, if you want to learn this song and learn how to play it correctly with the right intonation, go find a recording of it and learn how they play it, and then match your intonation, your notes to the recording. That will help you realize if you're in the right spot or not. If what you're playing sounds off to what you're hearing in the recording, then you have to keep trying to find the right note. So you may need to use recordings to help you give it as a standard. Make that recording the standard that you want to match that recording. And this stands for playing with rhythm as well. So yeah, that's the advice that I would give. Use a recording or learn the relationship with your voice. Yeah. All right, let's see some more. Most common to flat the E and B, because in Western music E, F, B, C are semitone apart, so I guess Arabic music space that out more. Well, Arabic music kind of has everything in between. We've got the semitones apart too. You can play Maqam Ajam You can call it a semitone. There's other maqams that it's more than just a semitone. Are there any string sets where the top strings are the same as the others instead of nylon? There are actually, yes. Go to oudstrings.com. The one, they also have a set that the G string is a wound string. I haven't seen one where the C, the top C is or the highest C string is a wound one, but I have seen sets with the G string is wound. Yeah. Intervals found in Western music is easy for me, but I have no idea how to start learning more microtonal intervals. Does the same advice apply? Yeah, it does apply, but you definitely have to kind of first learn the semitones, some of the basic maqams in that use just semitones, and then you have to slowly learn some of the basic maqams that use quarter tones, like maqam rast. Maqam rast is a good one to start with because it's similar in intonation, close to the major scale, but the third and the sixth are flatter. So it's close. And then you can practice matching, finding that note. All right, thanks so much, guys, for your time. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope I answered your questions. Hope you'll be watching the Oud recital tomorrow. And thanks so much for joining. Really glad to see everybody here. I hope this was valuable and it helps you learn something. And if you're on the newsletter, stay tuned. If you're interested in any of the Oud learning packages that I've got going or private lessons, happy to help. Yeah, so thanks. If there's anything I didn't cover, email me at support@OudforGuitarists.com. All right, have a great evening, day, wherever you are. Thanks. Bye.